Well, welcome back to The Real Story with Jeanne Ives. And as my listeners know, I like to put real people with real jobs in the hot seat so that they can tell us exactly what's happening. So with me today in the studio is Mike Flynn. Mike Flynn is a friend. He's a fellow Wheatonite. He owns a small manufacturing concern as well. And we're going to talk about small businesses and the impact of the economy on those small businesses. We're going to get to that. But another thing that Mike and I have in common is that we both served in the military. Now, Mike is a retired Navy captain, and I'm an Army captain. But if you're not
the same thing.
It is not the same thing at all because, in officer rank, an Army captain is basically an 03. So, you're third up on the list. And when you're a Navy captain, that's the equivalent of a full bird Army colonel. So Mike spent a lot of time in the Navy. We appreciate your service and everything that you did. And I was just wanting to let the audience know here. I actually was down at the Union League Club today for a lunch, and it's with the 786 Club. And by the way, listeners, we're looking for new members. The 786 Club is a club that supports our USS Illinois submarine force. So we support the families, and so when the men come off for shore leave, they do special things for the families. We send care packages to them as well. And we also have these quarterly luncheons, usually with somebody who is a member of the submarine force. So this luncheon today was with Commodore Commander Captain Aaron Peterson. He actually grew up in South Dakota, which is also part of the reason that I showed up, because I also grew up in South Dakota. He commanded the USS Scranton in San Diego. He is his recent assignment is senior board member for the Pacific Fleet Commanders Nuclear Propulsion Examining Board. So he evaluates and mentors commanding officers in the nuclear-powered warships, and he is actually the one who certifies and says that they are good to go and they can go out and do their mission. And so he spoke to us quite a bit today about that force, and I found it very interesting. He said, like everybody would expect, China is the threat here. And that when he talked a little bit about capabilities, and he says they're really building out their surface fleet. However, their underneath fleet, their submarine forces are not nearly as good as ours yet, but it is a concern that they may catch up. He also mentioned that they now are going to be building a brand new base on Guam, and that potentially they were going to station 5,000 Marines on Guam, and that currently there are 5 submarines assigned to Guam itself. So that's our most forward facing base right now as you project into the Pacific and into China, Taiwan area. So I found that interesting. I don't know your thoughts about any of that, or
I absolutely believe everything you said about China as being just not our friend, and that also relates to the manufacturing piece. So we can talk about that later if that ties in. So I did 5 weeks on a submarine, and then I decided to do surface nuclear power myself, but very, very competent people, very focused mission, much tougher, very tough conditions, much better than they were during World War II for people that have seen the Museum of Science and Industry submarine. But very, very important mission, really cool stuff that they do.
Yes.
Very hardworking.
And whenever we talk about this type of technology that is happening in the military, I like to remind people too that we have had nuclear-powered submarines since, I believe, 1955, if not maybe 1954. But it's been a long history of having nuclear-powered submarines without an incident or an accident. So it's a very remarkable safety record.
Without a nuclear accident.
Well,
they have lost 2 submarines.
Yes, they have.
Let's see.
Yes.
So anything you could look at Ukraine, for example, and tanks and the success of an anti-tank weapon against tanks, and the U.S. Marine Corps getting rid of all their tanks, for example, which they did about a year ago. So anything, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
One of the things that China did was they built they built targets in the outline of US Navy ships, so on land. So their aircraft actually are practicing against ship silhouettes flying up on them. So there are several different, at least 2 different designs on their training, aircraft training facilities. So submarines are very, very important. They're important on the anti-ship mission, the anti-submarine mission, and ballistic missile nuclear deterrence mission. And they do a bunch of other stuff too, I'm sure, other missions, Navy SEALs, insertion type things. So very cool.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. I think the technology and the safety record, and I don't know, our producer here, he served on a submarine, JP. Many of you guys know JP. He sits in the studio, who does all of our technical stuff. He served on a submarine too. I mean, just I have my hats off to them for doing that. I would be claustrophobic. I couldn't do that.
Well, they're busy enough. The people that are actually assigned to the submarine are working rotating shifts, and they're so busy. I think that helps with at least some of. You don't have time to sit around and think about, like, why am I really here?
Yeah.
So.
Right. On another note, my son is deployed. He actually is a C2 pilot, so he flies on and off an aircraft carrier. And he texted me the other day. He goes, yeah, I had to take a bunch of dignitaries out to the aircraft carrier. I'm like, doesn't your mother qualify as a dignitary? I really want to ride in one of those, I don't know how I get that gig or get on a submarine. So I might have to figure out how I can maneuver that.
I support you. Absolutely.
I'm not dignified. Yeah, I'm only, I only am top flight when it comes to my family. Otherwise, forget it. Nothing else. So anyway, Mike, we wanted to talk to you though. So you basically, a lot of your time though was in the reserves. So at the same time that you were serving our country in the Navy Reserves, you were also
working a full-time
working a full-time job as a manufacturer, a small manufacturer here in the Naperville area. Tell us about what you guys, we had this conversation when I first got into politics about how Caterpillar, you used to supply, 100% of your product was supplied to Caterpillar.
And it is right now as well.
Okay, and it is right now. But at one point, 90% of the parts that you shipped were inside of Illinois. And then before long, you told me that almost every single part that you ship goes out of Illinois to be assembled further on. Is that still the case? What's going on?
Sure. Caterpillar moved their production facility, their truck engine production facility out of the Peoria area. So one business line they exited completely, and other business lines they built a facility in Seguin, Texas, outside of San Antonio. And they moved, not that long ago, they closed Aurora, Illinois.
That's right. I remember that.
They had a facility. We shipped very little over the years to that facility. That facility was more putting engines put the bulldozer engine into the bulldozer.
Okay.
So they married up the pieces there, is my understanding of what occurred in that facility. And those pieces got farmed out to other Little Rock, Arkansas, other various facilities in, I would say, more employment-friendly, business-friendly states. I'm not telling anybody anything that they don't know.
Right.
Caterpillar, not that long ago, announced the movement of their headquarters from Illinois to Dallas or Austin, Texas, to Texas.
Yeah. So what's the situation now? Where do your parts go?
Go to Lafayette, Indiana is our biggest individual customer.
Just across the border.
Just across
to Lafayette,
the border. That's
Indiana.
Right.
Oh, how nice. Okay.
Right. Exactly. So I spent the whole day at Caterpillar yesterday with some of the senior leadership there. We're behind. We have a backlog, talking about how we're going to catch up on the backlog.
And why is that backlog? Is there a reason for that backlog?
There's a couple reasons, and one reason has been staffing.
If you want to talk about it,
sure.
I'm just curious what's going on.
So one of the reasons is staffing. So it's been a struggle to find employees, and there are some jobs in manufacturing which are still entry-level type, putting parts in boxes, similar to Amazon, right? You could have an Amazon job, and you're putting every 11 seconds you're putting a barcode on a box, right? So there's similar type jobs in manufacturing. Manufacturing also has higher skill jobs as far as machine repair, electronics type jobs, programming type jobs. So there are opportunities to make a good living as a first line employee in manufacturing, or working for companies like Fanuc, for example, or Mazak, large equipment OEMs.
Okay, so staffing. How about supply chain issues? Not so much, or
the supply chain. All of what we receive is coming from the United States. So all the foundries that we purchase from are coming from the United States, but
is that steel mainly,
so
or is it
exactly
input?
Yes. So we're purchasing steel, and we're purchasing cast iron and cast aluminum, and then we're machining those three materials, and we do a little bit of brass as well. But we are basically single source in the world for the parts that we supply to Caterpillar. There are a few exceptions to that, but so any disruption, for example, if we're behind on a part and that version of the engine doesn't get built on the supply line, on the assembly line at Caterpillar facility, well, the other parts that are supposed to go on that engine from other suppliers are also sitting by the wayside. So, for example, if there's electronics coming from China that go on a Caterpillar engine, if there's a disruption to that supply chain, then that's potentially affecting Caterpillar, but it's affecting all of the other suppliers as well. And we've seen this in automotive. This is obviously not unique to Caterpillar.
Right.
So you're missing a chip, or you're missing a bolt. Well, you could have expensive engines not shipping, or expensive pieces of equipment not shipping for lack of what would seem to be a very simple part.
Wow. And I've been in your shop. It's
yes.
you do precision drilling there, but it's not also it's not like you're using a lot of robotics, for example.
We are not, and it's something that is in the back of our mind. We have a variety of parts with different part geometry. We're not an automotive type place where we're going to ship 1 million of something a year. So more than a third of our parts, we're shipping fewer than 50 a year. So you're shipping one part that looks like a book, and one part that looks like a flower pot, and one part that, you're shipping manifolds and housings and elbows and, different kinds of parts like that, automotive, and they all have different geometries. So, and in addition, much of what we ship has relatively short cycle time. So we're not machining, for example, an engine block, which might go into a machine and come out 6 hours later. We're machining parts that go into a machine and they come out 15 minutes later.
Right.
Full. So we haven't found a fit for automation yet.
Got it.
Which is not to say that as automation keeps improving, that there won't be more. I mean, we have big horizontal machine centers is our primary work, and those are almost a category, I would say, of automation, in the sense that if there's a part that has 15 different operations, it used to be that there were 15 different individual tools. And there'd be one person would operate this tool and then go to the next tool and do one thing. I'm going to drill this size hole, and then I'm going to tap the threads into this size hole. And each time a person touches it is another chance for it to get messed up. So in this case, when we can put it in a machine one time and have it come out, or have it come out and then flip it over and do the other side, now we've eliminated a lot of opportunity for scrap or for defects, and we're coming a lot closer. The precision is a lot higher.
Okay, so, and your parts, are any of them staying in Illinois? I don't know if you really answered that question.
We
completely.
ship to Caterpillar's spare parts facility is still in Illinois.
Okay.
So that's on the order of It's not 10%. It's less than. It's a single-digit percent of our business, and then those parts go to the dealer network all throughout the world from there. So
back to
it's moved. Caterpillar has moved.
It has.
Manufacturing has moved. The employment has moved. I don't know what at the peak. I don't know what Caterpillar's employment number was, but for each, manufacturing is similar to farming. It's a core industry. So when you have, we're actually making changes to a part. We're creating value, physically changing a part.
Right.
So the people that work for us,
that is otherwise useless. Yeah.
That's right. And it's not. There's a piece of capital equipment that is making that change, and the people that work for us, well, guess what? They go to the grocery store. They get their taxes done by an accountant. They go to the doctor. So when the manufacturing core industry moves, you need fewer of all of those other industries. You need fewer grocery stores. You need less fast food. You need less of all those things. I don't remember the exact number. I've seen the number in the past where each manufacturing job, how many other jobs does that affect? And whether that number is 2 or 3 or 7, I don't remember what that number is. So it's a big impact.
It's a huge, and manufacturing in the state of Illinois, we're often known to have skilled labor in this area. And I remember conversations with the Illinois Manufacturers Association. Sure. This is a constant drumbeat. We have 300,000 manufacturing jobs. People are retiring. We need to fill 300,000 manufacturing jobs. We have great manufacturing jobs. Well paid. You're well paid for these jobs. They're good benefits as well. We need, and their concern, and I'm going back. You can go back 10 years and have the same conversation. Their concern has always been that if we don't keep the businesses here, then the knowledge base will leave.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah,
yes.
and when you lose that skilled labor, then it's just easier to plant your business somewhere else, which is what we're finding in this economy, is that people are planting their businesses somewhere else. I was just, I don't know if everybody noted this, but another Chicago area corporate headquarters is hitting the road. Lake Forest-based auto parts supplier Tenneco plans to move to Michigan. Part of that was a merger, but still, headquartered here, now moving to Michigan. And why? Because they have a big manufacturing base there as well, and so it's probably just cheaper for them to do business from Michigan.
Sure, and you know what else companies do? We pay taxes.
Yeah.
And you know what our employees do? They pay taxes.
That's right.
So you're
property taxes, sales taxes, income taxes.
Sure.
You name it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I'm sure you know more than I do, but communities like Oak Brook, where you've got shopping centers that attract people,
right?
Well, that's contributing to the tax base of that city.
Yep.
So the cities or the towns, municipalities that don't have that,
yep,
it's a bigger burden on the residential taxpayers.
No doubt. Back in the 08-09 recession, when kind of things all, we had this housing crisis and people were in dire straits and all that. The Naperville Township assessor at that time, Warren Dixon, very good friend of mine, he said, it used to be that the property tax wealth base in that state, and when it all collapsed, by the way, the wealth of the businesses dropped as well as the wealth of individual properties dropped. And so when that goes down, there's a trade-off here. But essentially at one point, businesses were picking up 40% of that property tax levy that went then to your schools, your municipalities, police, fire, infrastructure. And, within a couple of years, it was down to businesses only supplying 33% of that property tax base. Well, what happens? All of that levy gets shifted to the residential.
Sure.
And then your individual property taxes go up.
And you know what else businesses do? They donate.
Oh, they do. That's right.
So, for example, I have not seen it, but I believe it's as we go east that Caterpillar made a big donation. So there was when that high school was built.
Yep.
Caterpillar made, so there's something in that school that they donated the money. So it's just further elimination of burden on the residential taxpayers.
So back
and the
to
renters.
your individual situation, you mentioned that employee shortage is an
Right.
issue. Why is that? We have the highest unemployment rate in the country right now, as it sits. That Illinois does 4.5%. Other states are doing much better. I believe if we had the same unemployment rate as Missouri, we would have 100,000 more people in Illinois working. We certainly have people that I believe could work and certainly could be trained in manufacturing. Give us an idea of your entry-level employee. What skills are needed that they must come into? What qualifications, certifications are required of them?
Well, we have a range of jobs and a range of pay, and at the very entry level, our requirements are very, very low. It's basically you show up, you're clean and sober, legal to work in the United States. You have to be on time. We run 3 shifts, so we're not flex time. We're not piecework. We're not comp time. If you commit to first shift, I've got somebody else running that machine on second shift and somebody else running it on third shift, so you got to work your core hours. We have been working. There's a lot of opportunity for overtime right now. I had a person quit on Monday after 30 minutes.
What?
I had texted him. I had toured him around. I tour and interview everybody. So we had walked around late last week, probably on Friday, and seen people work. Is this job for you? He was referred to us through an agency. How much? And they know that like the pay range that I want to pay. So we met his pay requirement, and he showed up about 15 minutes late on Monday, and about 30 minutes later, our employee who was training him went to the supervisor and said, this person just walked out. Didn't say anything to anyone and just was gone. So I had another person quit on Monday, the second shift person, at basically their lunch break. He told the supervisor the job wasn't for him. He'd work 3 or 4 days. So I figure that I have to have 4 people actually start work to have 1 person there in 3 months. So that's not counting the number of people that I interview or I tour or people that initially the agency sends over or initial contacts from somewhere.
Right.
So it's I think it's due to a combination of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll ask people, well, what were you doing last week? Well, I wasn't working. So what paycheck do you have this week? Well, I don't have a paycheck. So how are you getting by? So then the problem is maybe you don't need a 40-hour job. Well, we're not DoorDash or Uber,
Right.
where you can just show up. We're not a gig economy job.
Right.
We invest in capital equipment, and we need that equipment to run. So you're either part of the solution, or we just have to go our separate ways, and it's not personal. We have to get somebody else, because Caterpillar wants their parts on the truck, and they don't care whether it's you that puts them on the truck or me. They just want them on the truck because their customer, and Caterpillar invested a lot of time and senior leadership time in explaining to us, going over yesterday, what their customers want and what their customers are using their products for. So it's emergency backup. So for example, in the hurricane in Florida, there was a hospital in Tampa that was able to stay open because 6 months ago they'd purchased Caterpillar electric generation, and a lot of the other medical facilities had to evacuate their patients, and this particular hospital didn't have to do that. So all the internet cloud
Right.
data storage
Right.
backup, they all have emergency backup electric generation. Peak shaving type thing on the grid,
Right.
while you've got solar or you've got wind power or you've whatever power you have. Well, what happens when the sun's not shining? Where does the electricity come from? So that's part of the solution. So they have all of these different marketplaces. You're doing oil rig drilling. Some of the smaller oil rigs, they're very remote. They're not connected. They're not
Right.
plugging into somewhere that's bringing the electrons to run their equipment.
I think that part of the problem we have here is that people don't think it's a sexy job.
Well,
and
sure.
that's shameful because it's so important. I mean, and I also feel like there's a real lack of appreciation and understanding
Absolutely.
of how things are made and how you get what you get. I mean,
You're
this pen
right.
had to be manufactured. This microphone, every one of these little screws, this little rivet, all of this is individually manufactured and then assembled. And you don't just the Amazon delivery, the box comes
Sure.
to your door, or you go to the grocery store, you pick it off the shelf, you have no idea how that can was made.
I saw a video clip, and this was a few years ago. Tim Cook from Apple was talking about manufacturing in China versus manufacturing in the U.S. And he said, do not underestimate China. He said, people are underestimating it. We're probably not underestimating it now, but at the time, people are underestimating it. He said, you could get all the manufacturing engineers in the United States in one place, and you wouldn't even fill a football stadium. He said, you go over to China, and you've got this whole industrial base. It's a totally different thing. So are people going to Wabanzi Valley High School and Matea and Nequa and Naperville Central, Naperville North, Wheaton Warrenville South? Where's the shop classes and the machine tool classes? So people do not think of it maybe as a glamorous job, but you can make a good living doing it.
Mm-hmm. Sure can.
My daughter spent 3 weeks in Germany this summer and lived with a host family. And in Germany, you get tracked after graduating from elementary school, and there's 3 different high school tracks. So there's either the academic track, like you're going to go on to college, or there's the trade school track. You're going to go be a HVAC person or electrician or plumber or machinist.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's one kind of in between where you can possibly divert to either one. But based upon your scores, because there's a lot of people right now that start college and don't complete college, or start college and they don't have a plan, and they don't have a passion for something, and they're majoring, they're just taking random classes, and they have a degree, and 4 years later they're applying for jobs that probably they could have applied for
without a degree.
That's
saved
right.
a lot of money. Mm-hmm.
That's right. And they could have, certainly if they'd spent those 4 years, one of my relatives worked for Walmart for 17 years, and Walmart does a lot of promote from within. So you can become a store manager and make a really good living, more than $200,000, I think it is, as a store manager.
Mm-hmm.
And you started at the absolute entry level, and 8 years later, you're the store manager. So now that's obviously not everybody gets there, but predominantly their store managers are promoted from within.
Here's the bottom line. If you don't have a job and you can walk into a manufacturing job where you can be trained,
sure,
and immediately get a paycheck the next week because you actually showed up.
That's exactly right.
I mean, okay, sorry. we need to work on this. We need to work on this.
You're exactly right. The minimum requirements, you don't have to read a blueprint.
Right.
We provide gloves and hearing protection and safety glasses,
right.
everything that's needed, and
benefits.
You could have no experience in machining, and 3 days after starting with us, you could be running a CNC horizontal machine center by yourself, a $450,000 piece of equipment. We could teach you how to load, unload, deburr the parts in an hour, and the inspection of the part that you're making might take another day and a half. Plus, we don't want you to break the machine, so we don't want to leave you alone with it if we think you're going to mess it up.
Right.
So there's a little bit of time, just, okay, let's have confidence in each other, right, that you can actually do this. And then it'll take a little bit of time to get up to productivity, but we're not trying to, you don't become a machinist in a day or a week or a month or a year even. But we've put several people into the TMA apprentice program. We have a great history of promoting from within. So
solid. It's just a solid job opportunity.
You don't have
and
to,
if you don't have a job, we need people to take these jobs?
That's exactly right. You don't have to
That's
speak
right.
English. We cover.
I know you have
a bunch of different languages.
Your Eastern Europeans I met at your shop.
So we have Albanian. We have Spanish is the biggest language. Albanian is second, but we have people that are fluent in French, Russian, Turkish, several other languages. So if you speak one of those languages,
you're the United Nations over there.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
And then there's, of course, you got to speak Chicagoan too, I suppose, with an
That's
accent.
Right. We have great retention.
Bears. Okay.
We have a person that does training for us that retired off of full time. Our business started in 1950. He started in 1951 at $1 an hour. And when he retired, 20 years ago, he was the plant manager. Everybody worked for him. And then he took a few months off and he came back to work part-time, and he does some training. He taught himself Spanish late in his life to be able to speak directly without a translator. I do tease him why he didn't teach himself Albanian. But he was at work today training 6 of our operators. They'd all done on-the-job training. They all had at least a couple weeks with us. Some he had a few months, and he was teaching them, okay, here's how to use a height gauge. Here's how to. So he's going to do like 2 weeks of an hour or so a day for 2 weeks. And you're taking a little test and learning. Like here's everything that maybe. So we get away from, well, I taught you how to do this. You taught somebody else. That person taught somebody else, and by the end of it, it's all diluted. So we really kind of cut to the chase and get a much higher level. This person has forgotten more about machining than most people will ever know in their whole lives, and so he's in there teaching, and he doesn't need to do it.
Keeps him busy.
He's passionate.
He probably likes it.
He's passionate. It's a passion for him.
That's great.
So.
Okay, so let's turn to another topic, a third topic in this podcast, and then we'll wrap it up.
Absolutely.
And I just so another thing that you've taken on as a good citizen is you're an election judge.
I am.
And so just tell us how's that going? What have you seen? Do you think it runs pretty smoothly? Any big issues that have come up? And by the way, how'd you get started doing this?
Well, I got started doing it back in primary, maybe about 4 elections ago, when your email said that DuPage County was short on Republican election judges.
Yes.
So I did the application and followed up a little bit on that, and I was kind of last minute, and so I did not end up getting in for that election. Mm-hmm. But I got on for the next one. So the first election that I worked was the 2020 presidential general election. And then I worked both the elections and this current election already as an early judge, and I'll work on election day. So I retired out of the reserves in 2019. So I had a little bit more time, and still family and children at home, but I had a little bit more time, and I thought I was going to learn a lot, which I did. And I still am, and I thought it was something that was important, and I still believe that that's true. I don't believe that there's any kind of large scale organized fraud, people voting in person on election day especially, mm-hmm. or even early voting, at least here in DuPage County. I don't believe. Are there some people that come maybe? There were rumors about people coming from Cook County to DuPage County. They'd moved out, but they're coming back to vote in the last election because of who's on the ballot. Probably there's cases of that, people not voting at the address that they should be voting at. But overall, I believe the election day stuff and the in-person voting
is pretty solid.
Is legit.
Pretty secure, pretty legit. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
So we've done a little bit of election integrity investigation here at Breakthrough. In fact, we've done quite a bit of it. And we've measured the voter database against the National Change of Address list. And we've looked for places where, people obviously changed their address. Why did they change their address? And then they voted from their old address, even though they're outside of the 30-day window. So you have a 30-day residency requirement. I don't know if they train you specifically on that 30-day residency requirement, but I think that seems to be the sticky point with a lot of folks. And it certainly was in a couple instances, because when I looked at my own precinct, I'm a precinct committeeman, and I know that you are too. And when I looked at the National Change of Address list, and I looked at people that were in my precinct, or my neighbors in just like 2 streets out of my precinct, but my neighbors still, and people that I recognize on the name, I called them up and I said, I know you. I know you really well, and I know that you moved because I talk to you all the time. I've, actually,
Right.
you've done some work with me, blah, blah, blah. And you voted from your old address. And the story he said was, well, I went to go vote from my new address at my new place, and he was just a few towns over as they are starting to transition to their Florida address for an interim of about a couple of years. He sold his bigger home, went to kind of like an apartment place because they're building a home in Florida. This is very typical. It happens all the time. He goes there to vote, and the election judge says to him, well, you can't vote here because your driver's license says it has you at your old address. He's like, I don't live there anymore. I sold that home. I live here. We're eventually going to end up in Florida. I wasn't going to change my address when I still live in DuPage County. And the election judge, and this happened not just to him, but another couple and other couples, they're being told you need to vote from the address where your driver's license says that you live instead of the address of actually where you live. That's wrong. That's wrong information. You vote
Correct.
From where you reside.
You're right.
That's right. So, were you informed? What sort of training did you receive in this particular issue?
Well, what's supposed to happen is you, as the voter, walk up to check in to vote. Mm-hmm. If you can state your last name, your first name, the election judge is typing that in, and it's looking for you in the database. So your name comes up, or depending upon how many letters went in, how common your name was, possibly multiple voters come up. So then the election judge is supposed to ask you to state your address. So even though we're looking at your address, we're supposed to hear the whole thing.
That's like a voter verification thing
Yep.
to make sure that you, yes.
And we're also supposed to ask for your date of birth, a verification thing. And you don't have to show any identification to do this. So now, if you are registered to vote, and especially if you're registered to vote in DuPage County, your name should come up. And then it's just going to be print the ballot. Well, you have to sign, and the election judges are both signing. One election judge from each party is initialing that your signature matches. And then your ballot gets printed. So if any of your information has changed, or if you have never voted in DuPage County, then now we're into, and there's prompts on the computer. So it's not supposed to be somebody making things up or
Right.
just randomly flying, whatever direction they feel like doing.
Right.
It should be, okay, now for example, if you've moved and you're still you were in DuPage County before, so we can see you in the database, but you've moved, it's very straightforward to change your address. There's no reason not to do that. Now, how often do elections happen? Not often enough for everybody to get all proficient. So once you've done it and you know how to do it, it's easy. If you've never done it, it might be impossible. But there are other election judges there, and hopefully it should get sorted out. So if you don't have identification for that address, then on election day you can vote provisionally.
Right.
Which means you have to show up, depending upon the reason for why you're voting provisionally, you might have to show up at the DuPage County building with your identification.
Right.
So,
So in that case, maybe you don't want to go because especially the Secretary of State's office is sometimes not as efficient in changing your address. Maybe you just don't want the hassle of it. On your driver's license, you could bring in some other documentation that proves
That's
that your
correct.
address is changed, like a utility bill. How easy is that?
Right.
Right.
Even if you're registering from scratch, and it tells you, right, this is I believe this is correct, but it's telling the election judges both election judges, one from each party, are looking at the iPad, and it's telling you right on there what you need. So even if you are registering from scratch, if you've never voted in DuPage County, you need one document that has your name and address on it, and you need one other document that has either your name or your address. That's all you need to register from scratch.
And does any one of them have to be a picture ID?
No. So again, I'm going from my understanding. Mike Flynn said on the podcast that we don't need this, but it's telling you right there, and it's giving you a choice. It has a drop-down menu. So here's, do you have your birth certificate, or do you have your driver's license or your school ID? We did a change of address for a person. So I worked early voting. We did a change of address for a person using his school ID, and he had his interim driver's license. So he had applied for his driver's license, and he had the piece of paper. He didn't have the actual driver's license yet.
Right. That substitutes.
So, and I absolutely believe it was the person, like that was the person.
Right. And
he was trying to do the right thing, change his address to the correct address, and we did that. And it takes, rather than your ballot coming out in 30 seconds, now maybe your ballot is coming out in a minute and a half.
Yeah.
Because it's if one of the election judges knows how to do it, it's very straightforward.
Well, there you go.
So, as certain as I can be without knowing for certain, that people will cut corners and say, oh, you know what, the ballot's the same, or the ballot's almost the same.
The ballots can literally be different across the street.
Of course they can. And one of the frustrations for me as an appointed precinct committeeman, so this was my first time, I'm new to the job, right? So naive, looking at the hard copy of the registered voters and their addresses. Well, there were probably 15 homes with 60187 zip code, and my precinct is south of Roosevelt Road.
So different zip code.
And that was annoying to me because the list is sorted that way, so I was trying to get the numbers. I was trying to do the houses in order, and it was sorted by street and then by zip code. So it was out of order. There were probably another 15 houses so there are townhomes, and some of the townhomes have one house number and they have a unit A, B, C, D. So there'd be 3 registered voters. One would be registered to Unit A, one would be registered to Unit B, the unit would be blank, and that would be it. There would only be 3 registered voters. So I don't know whether the third one whether that person is in C or D, and maybe if that person's listed as Democrat, I'm not going to maybe leave anything for them. If that person is a Republican, I've got one letter for them. If that person is undesignated party, I've got a different letter for them. And I want to leave the undesignated party for the other one. So why is the Postal Service delivering? They're not supposed to be. They're trying to be helpful, I'm sure.
Right.
But the cards that the county mails, that's an important item that shouldn't be forwarded. It shouldn't be accepted. It should be returned. And then that's one of the signals that the county uses to drop people off. So I found one duplicate voter. So the woman was registered under her middle initial once and under her full middle name once.
Did she vote both times?
No, she had voted under her middle initial. I found 5 deceased people.
That on the voter roll.
Vote.
Sure.
So the oldest.
Any of the dead people vote?
Nope. Not at least not since 2016. But 2 of the people, one of them died in 2010 and the other one died in 2013, and still registered voters.
Yeah, and so it's 12 years later, and they're still on your list.
I asked a county person, and I don't think I got the right answer, but I asked a county person, what does it take to drop off a deceased person? And they said, well, we need a copy of the death certificate. Like, well, I'm sure that's not somebody that loses a family member. That's not first on the list or second on the list or maybe anywhere on the list. I'm going to let the county figure it out when they figure it out, or never. So does that mean that deceased people never come off if you don't provide a death certificate?
I mean, we found a 121-year-old who apparently, walked into the polling place and voted in 2020. And of course they said, that was a mistake in our database. It's not really, that really didn't happen. We actually have another database. Oh, you have another database? Well, now they won't get us hold of that. And we think that database is the poll book information. and they won't give us the poll book information. And we want the poll book information because that's where all the voters who are actually legitimately allowed to vote is housed, and they won't give it to us. And when you have 1,600 more ballots cast than voters that you have a name to, and then you try to tell everybody that the voter database is just so fluid with voters coming on and off all the time that it could have easily happened that way. That's not true. You have this information. It's in your poll book. We know it because when you look at the manufacturing information behind that poll book, they say that they house that information in there, and we can't get it. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's not that. I just wanted to know about you being an election judge and what you found out. So that's good.
There was a press release today, and I believe it's a 20,000 person decrease in registered voters in DuPage County compared to 2018. So look at the DuPage County press release. I actually have it printed out in the car.
Well,
so maybe your efforts are paying off.
Are paying off.
That people that I did nothing. I don't think any of my 3 children that have moved out of the house and out of DuPage County, I don't think they did anything to get themselves off the rolls. I tried to get them off the rolls. I called the county and said these 3 are out of the house.
Yep.
They're not going to be voting in DuPage County, and the response was state law says we can't drop them, just off of a phone call that they need to sign or something like that. So even though 2 of them are voting in Cook County. So I don't. There's many things. I'm sure there's reasons for some of these things, but it's a little bit frustrating to me when it's so easy to re-register. There's no
so easy.
So I've already voted, when I walked in to vote, if they said we can't find you, even though I've been a resident of DuPage County for over 20 years and voting, if I had to re-register or I had to show ID. Most of us go through, are carrying around our driver's license, right? It's there. So how hard is this, right?
It's not hard at all. It's not hard at all. And the frustrating thing is that it should be as secure and as accurate as you expect your bank account to be as secure and as accurate with your bank. That's the truth. Well,
and why is it not, even going to your point, why is it not transparent?
I don't know.
Why you don't have to release people's date of birth. You don't have to release. There's a lot of things you don't have to release. But why isn't just the list of registered voters? I mean, it's already being provided to both parties. So
absolutely.
Why is there some secret squirrel database? Like I'm keeping 2 sets of books.
That's what they said to the state's attorney when we brought this issue up. They said, "Oh, that was a mistake, and we actually have a second set of books." Okay, all right. Well, hey, it's been fascinating talking to you about everything from the submarine force to manufacturing to elections. So happy to have you on the podcast, Mike Flynn. Thank you a lot for joining The Real Story, where we put real people who do real things in front of our listeners.
Thanks so much.
All right.